2.9 slot card. 2145 megahertz. Oh no, oh no. It is here, everybody, the ROG Strix 3080. And I've been waiting, well, I say ages, I mean, let's be honest, it's been about 2 weeks for this card to actually arrive here in the studio. This year things are a little bit different because we have the excellent TUF card that is considerably cheaper than this. So what sort of upgrades would you get for going for the Strix, and is it going to translate into better and quieter gaming performance? Now let's get this out of the way straight away. This is not a very cheap graphics card. It's a little bit more expensive than MSI's Gaming X. At the time of filming, all of the pricing for 3080s is inflated. This isn't going to be the value option if you're looking for a 3080. But what we do have here is an absolutely fantastic looking graphics card. This thing is solid actually. Look how thick it is as well. This is almost 3090-esque. You'd be forgiven for thinking this was a 3090, but no, this is definitely a 3080. We do have 3 8-pin power connections on the top. The fans have come on a little bit since the previous generation of the Strix cards. They're not going to be any quieter than before, but they do move a little bit more air, so you should be getting fairly similar noise levels, but better thermal performance. But of course, as you're actually pumping more power into this, you're probably not really going to notice that much difference. You're just going to notice the performance. There is as well, somewhere, a little BIOS switch as well, just like the TUF. Here it is along the top. So you've got performance mode and a quiet mode. Pretty self-explanatory. As we saw last time, the performance mode doesn't necessarily give you more frames a second, it gives you better cooling. We've got a really decent looking backplate on this thing. You can see we've got these metal elements throughout. We've got some ventilation here as well, all looking pretty smart. A feature I've always loved with the ROG cards is that you've got 2 little fan headers here, so if you're wanting a really quick and easy way to have some case fans that are going off your GPU temperatures rather than your CPU, just plug them in here. That's an easy way to get around that problem. But we do of course need to mention that we actually have 2 HDMI 2.1 ports on the ASUS cards this year, along with the 3 display ports. Now I am going to take this moment to actually upset some ROG fanboys by saying that I prefer that inside the box with MSI's cards you do get a GPU sag bracket, which granted you might not want to use, but it's nice to have the option. You don't get that here, you just get some cable ties and a really weird and out of place ROG ruler. Like why would you want that? One ruler to rule them all? One ruler to stay in the box forever. Jumping back a generation, here we have the old Strix card, which looked very similar to the Strix card on the 1080. So I am glad actually that they've done something completely different. They've definitely made it a whole lot bigger. I mean, comparing these 2 things side by side, you can really see the difference in size actually. This was always probably the biggest 2080 Ti, maybe like MSI's Lightning was slightly bigger, but this was always huge. So these things put next to each other, you can see there is a considerable difference in size, to make sure this will fit in your case before buying. Comparing directly to the TUF, I've actually still got this in this NZXT H1, and yes, it does get slightly noisy, but not noisy enough that you can hear, and the temperatures have been fantastic, for those of you that are asking. Just in case you're interested, no, the Strix card will not fit inside this case. I can see that with my own 2 eyes. So this is probably the comparison that matters the most, and this very big TUF card suddenly feels pretty small. So there's a big difference in weight, big difference in size, and I don't think you'd be disappointed with either, but having the ability to actually hold both in my hands at the same time, I can see where that extra money is going. This clearly has a more substantial cooling solution, there's more bells and whistles on it, you've got the extra power delivery, but then again, this card is probably going to give you pretty similar performance. They're both the overclocked editions, so I stand by the fact that most people will probably be looking at this one, unless you want something a little bit extra, which this definitely fits the bill. 2.9 slot card. Okay, no, actually, I tell you what, in person, that does look very good. I'm just a bit weirded out by this bit here, just the way it sticks out. I don't know, it's not my favorite thing in the world, but this little light bar all down the side, I think it looks a little bit ridiculous in photos, but once you put it in a case, actually, pretty smart, pretty smart. First little boot up. Oh yeah, rainbow. So, it's not RGB overload, it's pretty tasteful so far, just pretty cool little light bar, nothing over the top. You can of course set this to do different things like tell you temperatures and things. The thing that stands out or doesn't stand out to me though is that I think the best looking bit of the card is actually the fans themselves and that whole design on the front, which obviously you can't really see in a standard case configuration. So if you're wanting to go for like a vertical GPU mount or something, I think that will look a whole lot better. But obviously the downside with that is that you're, in most cases anyway, actually restricting your airflow a little bit. So you are having to choose between the best aesthetics and the best performance. Oh, there's a plant in the middle of my set. Right, let's waste no time and jump straight into the games. Here we have Far Cry 5. We're running this at ultra settings, 4K resolution, and you can see we're actually getting a GPU clock speed over 2000 megahertz, and we haven't experienced any crashes, which is going to be a very big factor, I think, for a lot of people, because there have been some cards that have reported problems. Comparing to the TUF then, there is actually a decent step up when it comes to clock speeds. It's not going to be night and day, and I don't think you're actually going to notice the difference in terms of how the games feel, or even doing fixed benchmarks. But at around about 30 to 50 megahertz extra, the TUF never went over 2000. It's actually a decent improvement, but I guess it's what you'd expect at the very least when you're paying all of that extra money. This is in its quiet mode and it's doing a fantastic job. We're currently sitting at around about 74, 75 degrees. Remember that this is in the torture test, if you like, which is while it is a mesh airflow case, so it can get air. The case fans along the front are turned off to make it a little bit harder. But importantly, it's doing this while maintaining a decent level of quietness. It's not silent, make no mistake, but bearing in mind I'm right next to the GPU, I have no game noise in this room whatsoever, it's still actually very comfortable. So you can rest assured that if you are buying the Strix GPU, it's going to be pretty quiet. Of course, one of the main selling features of the Strix though is actually being able to push it as far as it will go. You've got the capability in terms of that power delivery and of course the cooling solution to overclock it. Let's give it a go anyway. Let's start now with the overclock mode. OC mode in the gaming app. And yes, before you ask, I have actually turned all of the fans back on the front to represent a very real world scenario now. So we've got a fully ventilated mesh case, good cooling throughout. What I've done here is increase the GPU boost now by plus 60, and we have increased the power by 122% on the sliders. And again, no crashes, no issues, no artifacting yet. Haven't done anything particularly drastic. But with GPU clock speeds of 2100, you know, this is a lot better than Founders now. And remember with the Founders Edition, the cooler's fine, but it's not going to give you this sort of overclocking headroom. Now this is starting to make sense. 2145 megahertz. Oh no, oh no. We pushed it too far. Let's dial it down then to plus 70. Can you hear that coil whine though? This is what it sounds like in the menus. Not good. Not good at all. So it definitely looks like then the ceiling is going to be around about plus 50, plus 60, plus 70. It is going to depend on your exact GPU and of course the game maybe that you're playing, the different loads and your power supply. There's a lot of variables. If you're expecting like an instant crash as soon as you go over 2000 megahertz, which is what I've been hearing I guess has been happening in some games with some graphics cards, that does not appear to be the case here, which is good. But of course, when it comes to long-term stability, that is something that is completely different to dialing it in, I guess, and it's something you'll have to do over the course of days, if not weeks. Ultimately, the Strix card is excellent. It's really good. I love the fact that they've done a complete design revamp. I think it was due. I mean, this is just a little bit safe, plain and boring these days, isn't it, with the old one? So definitely a step up there. But when you're charging around about 100, if not more than £100 more versus the TUF edition, it does make it a very difficult sell. And the fact that it's smaller does mean that it will fit in more cases. This fits in the NZXT H1, this Strix card will not. But I think it's a really easy recommendation actually, and that just comes down to the fact that if you want the very best performance possible without spending RTX 3090 money, then this makes a lot of sense, but you're going to have to overclock it to get there. We're still looking pretty safe in terms of stability, and this is running at, what's that, 2100 megahertz. But when it comes to the graphics card that I would recommend to most people, then that has to be the TUF edition. I think that's the best out of all the ones I've tested, all things considered. Would I rather have this or the Gaming X? I personally would rather go for the Strix, but I think this is still even more expensive than the Gaming X, so you do need to bear that one in mind as well. If you're looking at this and you're willing to spend as much money as the Strix costs just to get the very best, then I guess you've got it. But you're going to have to pay the price to get there. Thank you so much for checking out this video though, I really appreciate it. If you've liked it, please smash that like button, it helps out so much you wouldn't believe. Get subscribed for more just like this, smash that like button, let me know your thoughts down below. Would you be going for the Strix, the Tough, or none at all? Thank you for watching, I'll see you in the next one.